call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. All council members are present. We had our agenda that was in your packet. Is there any changes, additions, or to the agenda as presented? Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Dave. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Keith. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. Moving on to our minutes from our February 5th meeting. Is there any additions, corrections, or changes to the minutes as presented? I see none either. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Warren. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Is there any discussion? Call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. At this time is our public open forum. Is there anybody here who wishes to address the council? Anybody wish to address the council? Third time? Anybody? Okay. We will move on then. We have no public hearings this evening. We have several reports. We'll start by County Attorney Janelle Kendall's report.
Good evening. Glad to be here for the annual report. I have provided those documents to you ahead of time, give you at least a little bit of a chance to look over what's been going on in Sauk Center with your misdemeanor contracts this year. So 3 things to talk about. First, the diversion program and the community service that's been done in your town in this last year. Then we'll talk about crime overall, and then talk about specifically what's been going on in Sauk Center. As you can see from the diversion report, we did have 6 kids from Sauk Center this last year go through the diversion program in my office. In the past, we maybe get 1 here or there. The police chief knows who those kids are. Again, they're juveniles, so I'm not going to say on live television who we're dealing with, but they were people who had not been involved in the system at all before, and they have been given the opportunity to go through the diversion program. These tend to be first-time shoplifting, misdemeanors, maybe some damage to property, and what they're required to do through that program is admit that they did something wrong and apologize and make people whole for it. And we've had a lot of success with that program. In fact, we find people that don't make it through that program, that's kind of a red flashing light. If they don't admit that it might have had something to do with them and some community service might be a good idea, then we find that that's actually been a very good opportunity for us to increase the intervention with those kids. But the good news is the 6 kids that are in, 1 of them has already completed it and the other 5 are doing great, so we do expect that to go well this year. And they're doing their community service here in town. We also have some kids who got in trouble in other places who are doing their community service here for you as well. So we've got a big long report there. I don't want to take a lot of your time on it, but wanted to let you know that you did get more benefit from it in 2013 than you have in the past, and that those kids are doing well. Then next, I would ask that we go to the general crime report, the one with the charts and graphs. You can see that crime across Stearns County was generally up last year. We did hit a new high in serious crime. Good news, bad news is most of those were drug arrests, and they were small-time drug sales. The task force and the law enforcement across the county decided to step it up and take a bigger bite out of that, and they did. The good news and the bad news is that that's the sort of thing that when you step up the efforts and you apply the extra resources, you're probably going to get more arrests, and we did. So luckily, we are not seeing that violent crime is up. In fact, you'll see that that's actually down from the last couple of years. Property crime, when the economy went in the tank, it went down, and it's really not coming up too much yet. But that almost 100 extra drug crimes in Stearns County was a direct and intentional targeting by Stearns County law enforcement to pull a few more of those small-time dealers off the streets, and they very successfully did that. So even though the numbers are up a little, it wasn't necessarily a bigger drawdown on the system because that was a planned by the cops, and it comes through my office, and those things are not necessarily a lot of trials involved in those cases. Either they're your drugs or they're not, and either the search was legal or it's not. Looking at then the next page, going specifically to the Sauk Center prosecutions, you can see that, and actually your chief will be making his report, that overall the small-time drug offenses were up this last year. Now, maybe that's just because they're catching them. I don't know that that necessarily means that it's happening more. It means that we've gotten better at ferreting it out. And so you can see both on the felony level countywide, the drug arrests and prosecutions were up, and likewise citywide, those smaller times were as well. And if we can get involved with people early on in those type of things, then we don't run into the troubles that end up in person crimes and burglaries and other bad things happening. So the bad news is those are up a little bit. The good news is that gives us an opportunity for intervention. And when they're on the front end like that, it's not necessarily a lot of drawdown on the system. You can see then specifically going to the Sauk Center prosecutions that your numbers remained a little lower. Your contract price dropped. When we renewed the contract this last time, it went down because your numbers have gone down now for enough years in a row that we recognize that, and we did reduce the amount. We still work with your officers 24/7, 365. We had 48 and a half hours of training this last year that they were involved in. We've got some more coming up in March and April. Your department is always very interactive with our office, and we very much appreciate that. They're not afraid to pick up the phone and call and say, what do you think about this? And likewise, we have a lot of interaction on individual files. And I appreciate that. I'd much rather hear from them when they're thinking, you know, there's a certain way that I'd like to see something go. We've been working with this family. What can we do? Are there things that can make this go in a way that makes sense for our town? So that's the good news about having the amount of resources that I do. When we apply those to a city of your size, we can really make a positive difference. So with that, again, the numbers kind of speak for themselves in terms of what we had here specifically in your city and across the county in the last year, but I always like to come for questions.
Any questions? No? I know you just handed this out this evening, so I don't, unfortunately, have a lot of questions for you, but I did notice that across the county-wide, there was some 2013 have some pretty serious crimes, the way it looks.
We had
larger.
We had 5 homicides there, not this last fall, but the fall before. We had 5 homicides in 3 months, and we usually average a couple a year in a county of this size. So when we had 5 in 3 months, the last one being the death of a peace officer, that was a huge drawdown on our office and on the system. Unfortunately, we didn't end up with the prosecution in the Cold Spring, in the Tommy Decker matter, but a ton of time and effort went into that, and the sheriff has done his press releases on that. We only have one of the other cases that's left for trial. The rest of them did get from the fall of 12 to get resolved last year, so that we've been able to move those things through the system. The last one is the one that was in Rockville, and that was actually set for trial about a month ago, and at the last minute, the defense attorney asked for more time to get ready. And when they ask for more time to get ready, you give them more time to get ready, because you want this to all stick by the time we get done. Yeah, there was some very serious business that went on there. And sometimes when they are of the size that the whole county hears about it, it can actually be helpful, because I think it makes people be on more alert and pay more attention to what's going on. We've got some arson stuff, for example, going on in the city of St. Cloud right now. They haven't figured out yet who's doing that, but when those words go out, people pay better attention. They lock their doors, they keep an eye out for what's going on, and sometimes that's how the cops catch bad guys, is because the average citizen is paying attention.
Very good. And one last question, the adult diversion. I know you talked about the youth, but I see you do a significant amount of adult diversion as well. And that's been successful countywide?
Yes. It tends to be even more successful with the kids, because frankly, if you can get in there earlier, but the adult diversion likewise is for people who haven't been involved in the system before. And our numbers, our recidivism numbers are very good. We're actually doing an updated study right now. When people get that chance up front, it's kind of a wake-up call. And that's why we really figured out with the kids, not only is it a wake-up call for them, but if this does not go well, it's a wake-up call for us. If that was a problem, that's actually become kind of a red flashing light for us, that if you're on your first time through the system, it ends up in defiance. That's not the time to just kick them over into court. That's the time to show up on the doorstep and say, wow, what's going on? And likewise with the adults, by the time they're adults, if this is their first time in the system, wow, what's that about? And we seldom see those people back. We just didn't happen to have any from Sauk Center this year.
That's my question. I didn't see any, so.
Nope, not from your town that year anyway.
I do notice they do a lot of hours of service, though.
Yes, yes, and that's been one of the things. As the community service crews through probation went down, ours actually went up. So we had actually some of the cities call and say, we're not able to get what we used to out of the people who are on probation, and we tried to answer that call. And that is something that I know Vicki knows, if there are things specific in your town that you would like done on a community service project, please give us a call. Because even we then can put you on our list, even if the kids aren't from Sauk Center. If you have a city project that they could be helping with, please let us know. And that's why Barb's name is there as well as mine, is because Barb's the one who can literally, sometimes these kids will come in and you ask them what they'd like to do to make a difference and they don't know, so we have suggestions. And you could be one of them.
Okay, good, thank you. Sounded like someone was trying to make a call as you were answering.
It was not me.
Sorry about that, very sorry.
If the sheriff calls, I would have looked at it and answered, it was not me.
Does anybody have any questions for Jimmy?
One, I think Commissioner Notch wanted to be here this evening. He couldn't. He had some things going on today that he already had scheduled. But generally, he'll probably be with me when I come to these type of things, so that if we have county questions generally that the county attorney can be of utility, he will probably be with me. So as he comes in now as your commissioner, I let the commissioners know when I'm out here in cities in their district, so that if they have the opportunity. He wanted me to pass on that he would have been here tonight, that he couldn't be, but for future reference, probably will be.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to our police department monthly report. Brian?
Activity report for January 2014. Some of the numbers we had 6 alarms, 24 assists for other agencies. We had 10 driving after suspension or revocations. We had 10 hit and run accidents, 5 juvenile problems, 17 matter of informations, 19 medicals. We had 7 driving without a license, 10 accidents, 12 suspicious calls. We had 189 verbal warnings. We had 284 calls for a total activity of 473. You see that's very comparable to December, pretty much the same. And then 2013, we're just under the numbers a little bit. Everything's a little lower. Well, calls are up, I guess, from this year from last year. Otherwise, pretty quiet month this time of year right now, until it starts warming up. That's all I have for January.
Questions for Brian?
Other than the driving after revocation or driving without a license, that must have been up then.
Yeah, it was. We're seeing a lot of that right now for some reason.
I thought they were just goofy drivers, but they must not know how if they don't have a license. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, that could contribute to that. Yep.
Amazing.
All right. Any other questions?
And looking at the UCR codes, or the amount of them, the 10 hit and run property damage vehicle, and then 10 on the property damage vehicle, that's probably just, what, 2 incident reports you fill out for the same thing, maybe? Or is that actually?
It could be, we've had a lot of hit and runs. Usually this time of year you get that, hitting buildings and hitting, certain objects. So yeah, that does increase quite a bit from the actual accidents. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Those are separate incidents, though,
Yeah.
I guess is the question, right?
They
are separate?
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Unfortunately.
Any other questions? Thank you, Brian.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to the Planning Commission report, Sarah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In your packet, you have a copy of the Planning Commission report. We did have a new member that we swore in. That was Mark Magnuson. And the election of our chairman was Warren Stone, and vice chair was Diane Kelly. We did adopt a couple changes in the bylaws, and the one that was handed down from the city council about not requiring a PUC person to be on there. And we also did change the regular meeting time to 5:30 p.m. We have a review of the 2013 year-end reports, discussed projects and goals, reviewed the 2014 meeting schedule, excuse me, and then they received the final copy of the fee schedule that was approved by the city council last, I think that was at the December meeting. Were there any questions?
What are the goals for 2014?
One of the things we discussed was about the enforcement of some of our, like when they apply for variances, when they have exceeded like a driveway width, those kind of examples. And I don't know if Warren, if you want to explain a little bit more about that.
Basically, right now, just for an example, we've got a curb cut of 24 feet is what is allowed at the end at the street. Well, actually, that is supposed to go back to the end of the right-of-way before your driveway can start expanding. We're getting different people just doing the 24 feet at the curb and then expanding their driveways out immediately, which is a violation. And we've been getting a lot of feedback from some contractors, well, we've done it this way for years, why should we change now? And one of the goals is to look at, if you're going to violate the city codes, maybe we, as a goal, have to start enforcing stiffer rules at the contractor level or at the homeowner level to make sure it's abided by.
And we also talked about, maybe getting a little more education out to our contractors because things do change. And whether that's, via the mail or just, online on our website.
So the goal is to more thoroughly enforce the existing zoning regulations. Is that basically what you're saying?
Basically, yes.
And how would you go about doing that? What's the process by which, it brings to my mind the 3-foot setback issue we had, who was to measure when, who was supposed to pull tape and all that. So is that part of this?
That's a larger issue, but we're trying to...
So how do you go about better enforcing? Is that part of the goal or not?
Well, we want to enforce it better by, educating them better. If they, like I said, I try to draw diagrams. I know Vicki and I have gone over those a few times. And sometimes when they're out there on site, if we can get there early enough, but I'm only one person, to make sure that they are complying. And then sometimes it's after the fact, then it's harder.
So how are you going to go about better enforcing the zoning regulations? What are the steps that are going to be taken in order, so far you've kind of described a few kind of things we might sort of do.
Right.
I
and
don't see you achieving the goal using those.
And it depends on if, with the council, if we want to, how far we want to take these enforcements, if it goes to, I can give them a stop work notice. Usually the city building inspector does that.
I understand. Those are all remedies that are available to you now, but what I'm not hearing about your goals is how exactly you're going to go about and achieve that. Is if you're going to make a site visit to each permit holder or, I don't know what, but you want to enforce those better, but I'm just not hearing how you're going to do that. I hear what you want to do, but I don't hear how you're going to do that. So, I would be curious to hear more
getting
about
out and do more site visits, but for an example, I can't be there when, they give me the site plans and we approve them, but I can't be out there when they're pouring the concrete, for example.
I understand that. And we've gone too long. All I'm saying is, what would be the plan to go about doing it? If you're the only one and you can't make it to everyone, are you going to try to do every other one?
We'll hire more help, Mike.
What's that?
We'll hire more help. How's
I don't
that?
think that's probably a goal you can set.
Actually, it's a goal for the planning commission to research how we're going to go and solve
Yeah.
these problems.
Oh, okay. Well, that's different.
Those
Okay.
answers are out there. We haven't researched it enough. We know it's becoming a growing problem. So the goal of the planning commission is to research how we can
Set your goals.
set our goal on keeping this reduced.
Okay.
If it means stiffer penalties or how we're going to go about helping staff do their jobs.
So is there
Or
going
to-
to, are
or
you
to
going to come
back-
back with with some of the goals and how you're going to achieve those
Or some recommendations?
Yes.
Yeah.
okay.
You know, and that's one of the things, when the planning commission does get to that point, it will come back for the city council to approve, and whether or not they think our goals or achievements on making people or whoever abide by city code, that'll be up to the city council.
So you're gonna bring back some recommendations for goals and objectives at a later meeting,
Right.
okay? Anything else, Sarah?
I don't have anything else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to the library annual report, Vicki.
In your packet, you were provided a report from the librarian, Don Shea, over at the library, and she just has a couple highlights in her update, and I won't read them all through, but she gave some statistics that there's of how many 96,111 items have been checked out of the library in 2013. If you do the math, you'll note that it's almost half and half printed versus electronic type media. So you'll see that we're going to books on tape and video and that type of thing, and but also there still is a lot of print material that is being checked out at the library. She also goes on to talk about her winter reading program for adults and then all the different summer programs that they do for youth to get them involved in the library, and talks about some of the other programs they're involved in, like the Theater Interactive Murder Mystery, the Heebie-Jeebies concert, Bruce the Big Guy, author Chad Lewis, Steampunk Jewelry Workshop, and many fantastic story hours and several ticket giveaways. So she kind of goes on to, it's more than just checking out a book at a library. They do have a lot of programs, and she's inviting all of you to visit the library again in 2014. So she just likes to touch base with the council. They really appreciate that the city participates with the Great River Regional Library System and allows the library to stay in Sauk Center.
Thank you. Anybody have questions? No. I think all of us from time to time have been there. The library is a great resource, and we're fortunate to have it. And as you can see, it's definitely gets used and still gets used pretty extensively. So, although technology is changing and the paperback books maybe is going not as used as much, there certainly is other ways to get media and information from the library. So I encourage everybody to go down there if you haven't and take a look. Vicki, anything else in regards to the annual report?
No.
Okay, thank you. We'll move right into our action items then this evening. Action item 7A is a chamber request for Sinclair Lewis Days. Vicki?
The Chamber has requested the use of various city parking lots, parks, and streets for Sinclair Lewis Days, and these 9 items are approvals of different city properties. And then also I have in your packet the parade route and then the Sinclair Lewis Days events from July 16th to 20th, which include these on city property and others. The request that she has before the council is lunch at City Hall on Wednesday, July 16th from 11 to 1:30. Turtle races and wacky water night, that would be at the Sinclair Lewis Park parking lot on Wednesday, July 16th. They're having the Kitty Pet Parade and concert. They want to close Park Road and the use of Sinclair Lewis Park on Wednesday, July 16th at 6:30 to 9. They have fireworks, music, and a hot dog eating contest. They want to close Park Road and the use of Sinclair Lewis Park and a fireworks permit for Friday, July 18th at 8 p.m. to dusk. Crazy Days, the use of the downtown sidewalks for Crazy Days sale on Saturday, July 19th. The Craft Fair and Family Fun Festival, they want to close Park Road and the use of Sinclair Lewis Park on Saturday, July 19th from 7:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Approval of the parade route, which is from State Street to 9th, Ash, then 6th, Main, and back on 10th. That's the regular route on Saturday, July 19th at 7 p.m. The Fly-In Breakfast, it'll be the 2nd annual Fly-In Breakfast to be held at the Sauk Center Airport on Sunday, July 20th from 8 to 1. and then use of Sinclair Lewis Parks for the Twin Cities River Rats Water Ski Show on Sunday, July 20th at 1 p.m. So all those are the items that are underlined on your packet. Those are the requests that are before you, all in one motion here. So we're requesting to approve the uses as requested, including the road closures and the parade route.
Any questions? This is consistent with years prior. I should just also note that the Sauk Center pageant will actually be on July 17th at 7:30 p.m. at the Sauk Center Auditorium as well. So a lot of things happening starting as early as Wednesday the 16th all the way through Sunday the 20th of July. So if there's no questions, is there a motion to approve the requests as noted of the road closure and the parade route?
So moved.
Motion by Mike, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Warren. Is there any discussion? Call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. Moving on to 7B, approve resolution 2014-9 seeking quotes for trail.
The Park Board, at its regular meeting on February 4th, recommended that the City Council begin the process of advertising for quotes for the installation of a trail at the multipurpose park. It would be designed and installed according to the approved amended master park plan for the multipurpose park that we did last year. The initial phase of this trail would be the circular trail around the open play area, will include a connection to the skateboard park and a connection to the existing trail. And then we'll have a final connection to the parking lot at the north end and to Park Lane after completion of other elements. And because there'll be some other construction and digging in of utilities, et cetera, and so we won't be able to connect those final pieces until a later date. The estimated length of the new trail is 1,050 feet at a cost of $13,000. And the project will be bid on a lineal foot basis, so the final price would be per actual footage actually constructed. And the proposed funding is the Park Dedication Fund. And I did include a copy of from the Master Park Plan, and I highlighted in orange the part of the trail that we're looking at completing under this phase. So what we're looking for is to approve Resolution 2014-09, authorizing advertisement for quotes for the trail construction in the multipurpose park.
Any questions? I did visit with Vicki earlier and asked her how many dollars we had in the park dedication funds, and we have $46,000 in that fund today. So I know we didn't allocate any dollars in 2013, so that's why you see there's actually 2 projects here in regards to park dedication funds. But with that, hearing no questions, is there a motion to approve the resolution 2014-9 authorizing advertisement for quotes for the trail construction in the multi-purpose park?
So moved.
Motion by Dave, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Warren. Any discussion? Call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor. Okay, we'll move on to C, approve resolution 2014-10 seeking quotes for the sprinkler system.
The Park Board, also at its meeting on February 1st, is recommending that the City Council begin the process of advertising for quotes for the sprinkler system at the multipurpose park. The initial phase of the sprinkler system would be pretty much the southern half. You'll see that I have it in the packet as the hashtagged area. And it'll be around the circular trail and around the basketball and the skateboard park and up to the existing trail. This system will eventually it'll be designed so that we will be able to add on to it and go around the future shelter, parking lot, and splash pad area. And again, I've got a copy of the master plan drawing in there to show the area that we're looking at. The estimates for costs were based on what we spent 2 years ago with an inflation factor applied. So we're looking at about $11,000, and the proposed funding as well as the park dedication. As Brad had mentioned, we usually do between $10,000 and $15,000 out of the park dedication fund in some park each year, and this would be like the 2013 and the 2014 for these 2 projects together. And so we're requesting to approve Resolution 2014-10, authorizing advertisement for quotes for the sprinkler system in the multipurpose park.
Vicki, I have a couple questions in regards to the sprinkler system. We have a well or there now.
We have the existing well, and so we would size the sprinkler system to be able to utilize the existing well, and the electric is there as well.
And the current well that we have there will meet the size that is going to be needed for this, or are we going to have to update the
Well,
that as well?
based on, we are requesting the quote or the bid be prepared based on the gallons per minute that we currently have at the well, which is about 45 gallons per minute. And so, you know, if you have more gallons per minute, you have bigger zones and less of them. If you have less gallons per minute, you just have smaller zones and more. So we have some sprinkler systems that are running on less, and then we have some that have about 70 gallons per minute. So, but the existing one we have is 45, so we're requesting it to be sized accordingly.
Very good. Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve Resolution 2014-10 authorizing the advertisement for quotes for sprinkler system in the multipurpose park?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Keith, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. Any discussion? Call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. Okay, moving on to our unfinished business this evening. First action business is a Sauk River Watershed Weed Harvester Agreement. Vicki?
Okay, previously, the City Council was asked by the Watershed District to enter into an agreement with the Watershed and the Sauk Lake Association that would lay out the parameters for management of the aquatic weeds in Sauk Lake, with the funds remaining from the now-retired Weed Harvester Program. The proposal is for the Watershed to retain the funds and amend the use of the funds from mechanical weed harvesting to a chemical treatment of invasive species. The agreement you have in your packet lays out the roles of each entity, being the Watershed, the City, and the Lake Association. The Council and the Lake Association both had questions that were referred to the Watershed's legal counsel, and those questions and answers are attached in your packet for review. And we do have representatives from the Watershed, and Tara Ostendorf will be here to be able to walk you through those questions and further clarify any questions that you may have. If the city approves the agreement, the city and the Lake Association would then be working to develop a management plan, and then we'd coordinate permitting and oversee and contract for weed control. And any expenses then would be submitted to the Watershed for payment out of that fund. And you had this in front of you 2 different times, on October 2nd and November 20th, so hopefully with the answers to the questions, we'll be able to decide if we want to move forward with this project. I think I'll just have Tara, if you don't have any questions for me, I'll have Tara come up and she can walk you through it.
That'd be great.
All right, so based on the questions and answers and the agreement, I'm just going to leave it open for you guys to ask me any more additional questions you might have. I know we met at a separate meeting to go over some of the questions that the Lake Association still had, and that's where this list of questions came from and answers from our attorney. So we're just going to leave it open for questions.
Okay. So as we have reviewed this on several occasions, as you are aware, and we have come, we being the city, had multiple questions. Do you want to, and maybe Vicki, between you and Tara together, maybe overview the questions that the city had and also the answers to what we had from legal counsel? Because not all of the questions specifically related to what the city's concerns. I think there was multiple questions in here. Some of them are very specific to the city, and so maybe I think certainly for the information for the city folks that are watching this on TV, we really should go through this and try to give them the best explanation as we can based on some of our questions. So do you want me to go through and ask specific questions and read the answers, or do you want to outline the questions that were related specifically to the city?
I can outline the questions that related to specifically from the city. One of them, the biggest question starting out, was the question of the management plan itself. Does that have to be developed before you enter into this agreement?
Which is number what?
Which is question 1 and also question
13 is one.
13,
yes,
right?
13. And the answer to that question was no, that agreement does not have to be specifically developed right now. That agreement will be developed between the city and the Sauk Lake Association, and you can do that by hiring a consultant to come in there and help you do the management plan. Obviously, you'd want an expert to help you put together a management plan, and I would suggest that it would also be a representative from the DNR to come and help you. Ultimately, the decision is going to rely with the DNR what they let you do on the lake as far as any kind of aquatic plant control. So you'd want a representative there to help you put that plan together. And any funds that you would need to do that, to, you know, if you're going to have an outside consultant come in to help you put that together, or just the time to put that together, can all be billed directly to that grant fund or to that project fund also. So the costs for doing that are covered under that existing funding mechanism.
Okay. That takes me into maybe one of the questions then outside of one of these that you actually had in the very second paragraph. And I think my question has always been is this was a project of the watershed district. We have been very involved, we being the city only from a arm of government, but we certainly have an intent, have an interest in the health of the water. I think one of the questions has always come is, are we best qualified to do it? But in the second paragraph here, it says, in more recent years, the curly leaf pondweed infestation is in decline. Because of the improved conditions, the frequency of aquatic plant management under the project has been significantly reduced. In order to better understand the needs of the project, the Board of Managers authorized an aquatic plant survey of the lake. The aquatic plant survey indicated a continued need for plant management and the project, but at reduced intensity, given the reduction of the nuisance conditions and a reduction of invasive plant species. Because of the reduced need for intensive plant management, the Board of Managers has determined that it may no longer be necessary to maintain a standing summer crew and district-owned equipment for the project. Rather, the Board of Managers believes the future aquatic plant management can occur more effectively with contracted services, consisting of both mechanical harvesting and chemical controls. That paragraph leads me to believe that the watershed believes that maybe there's not a need, as there once was, for the weed harvester, and looking at alternative needs. If that's the case, why would the city and or the association pick up the weed harvester and take on that as part of their plan if the watershed doesn't feel that that need is still there? That's kind of been my question as I've gone over this for a period of time.
So just for a point of clarification, are you assuming that the city and the Lake Association would take on the actual equipment and running that equipment?
No, we would take on the planning, I did make some notes on that. We would take on the planning we'd put together the plan, first and foremost, and we'd also oversee the process, if that's what you want to call it, as it goes forward throughout that plan with the association.
Yep.
I'm not sure that we're the best, organization to manage that type of a program. And so that's always been one of my concerns is who is best to manage that? And if it's not the city, I think we've always felt the watershed is kind of one of their things. They're good at that, as well as the Lake Association. I'm not sure that this group is, and specialized in it as you folks and the association may be. So I'm just trying to
So just for clarification on how this agreement came together, when we first started talking about this agreement, we were looking to who is the best suited partners that would enter into agreement like this. Obviously, the Lake Association has a larger stake in the project. Once you have curly leaf, you're going to always have curly leaf. You're not going to eradicate it. At that point, it's just control. And so there's always going to be a need for some kind of chemical control or some kind of aquatic plant control. With the district's new planning process and with the second generation plan also, we've kind of gotten to the point of saying there's only so much that we can do, and AIS, or aquatic invasive species control, is not one of the parameters that we're going to be focusing on. And so it's not something that we want to do. We don't do it for any other lake association in the entire district. It's a special case. And so we feel that it would be best left to the Lake Association to decide what kind of management they need in working coordination with DNR, because the DNR has that authority to do the AIS management throughout the state. That's their charge. And so we're really kind of trying to split out what are we going to focus on and what are other state agencies going to focus on that they already are in control of. And between the local organization, the Lake Association, and the DNR, we feel that would be the best suited to make those calls. Now, we included the city because the city in the original establishment order and in the original assessment for building that project fund, the city was one of the largest contributors of that fund. And so at the time that we were putting this agreement together, the previous administrator and legal counsel had decided to add the city onto there in case, as a major player in this project. Now, if the city, and this is stated in one of the questions too, if the city does not want to be involved in this and does not want to be part of the management of putting together the work plan and all that for every year, there's no reason that you have to be. It's just, we put it together like this. If the city wants to opt out of that, that is completely fine too, and leave it in the hands of the Lake Association.
And I think one of the questions also in here asks about the current financial of this project, because there was some dollars that were basically paid, taxed, and those dollars, what would happen to them? And I think one of the reasons the city had played a significant role in the beginning is that significant dollars came from this corporation of the city, the corporate boundaries. And there's still funds in there at this point. And those funds are in there and I understand the reasoning, if the problem comes back, there needs to be dollars in there to, again, either do it through the weed harvester program or some other means of controlling it, so you need dollars to do it. If the city opted out, we would have obviously no stake in how any of those funds are spent, and that would be a decision of this council. But also, we wouldn't have no say as far as what happens with how it's controlled. I think that's also one of the concerns. Again, not sure that that's the priority of the council. What happens to those dollars if the city chooses to opt out, the association chooses that it needs another partner and the watershed's not going to be that partner? What happens?
The board can come back to this petition, basically, to this project, and either they can turn the funds back to those landowners that those funds were collected from. You can do it that way. They can turn all those funds back, and then there's a zero balance on that fund, sell the equipment, and release all those funds back to those landowners. They can choose to do that, or they can, I don't think that at this time the Lake Association is willing to opt out of the entire project. I think that they're ready partners in the management plan development. But if that was the case and everybody opted out and there was no players who wanted to be participants in this program, the board would have to make the decision on what they want to do with those funds at that point. And I would assume, I'm not speaking for the board right now, but the next step would probably be then to release those funds back.
Can I clarify? The question is, what if the city opts out? It has nothing to do with the Lake Association. I don't believe they're contributing any significant funds anyway. Their owners might, the members might be, but the association I don't believe is.
Yeah, the association as an organization doesn't contribute anything. It's the landowners, the property owners. And so yes, if the city itself would want to opt out of the agreement, then that rests with the Lake Association, and the agreement would just be between the Lake Association and the watershed district at that point.
If the city refuses to, you need the city's permission to change the agreement is ultimately what it is. We're a party in the current agreement.
The current agreement hasn't been entered into. This is just a draft. So at this point, if the city wanted to opt out.
The agreement that's in place right now, the one for weed harvesting that's been in place for 10 or 15 years.
I don't believe that the city has a stake in the petition that way. You couldn't opt out or into.
Well, can the watershed district just decide to keep the money and start chemically treating the lake? The project specifies a weed harvester.
Yeah, they would do a modification to that petition.
Do they need our permission to modify this?
No.
Or can they just do it?
They can just do it. We're trying to put the project partners, bring all the project partners to the table, but if the city wants to opt out of it, it's the watershed's project, and so they can choose to modify it how they wish after that.
How do they do it in other lakes? You said this is unique with the Lake Association. What do they do in the other lakes?
Most lakes do the chemical management. It's a much more effective tool. It's much more selective.
Who runs it?
Usually it's an agreement between the Lake Association and the DNR, or the Lake Association will privately hire a consulting firm to come in and treat with cooperation from the DNR as they're the regulatory authority there.
How's it paid for?
The Lake Association raises their own funds usually, or they can apply for grant funding.
Why aren't we doing that?
This is the way the project was developed years and years ago. The Lake Association at some point could form an organization, they could do a lake improvement district, which is also a taxing district, to raise their money. They could apply for grants to raise their money. They could do all of that. Right now, we're talking about this pool of funds that we currently have that they can utilize in this fashion. And it's just a simple modification to the existing petition, so we're not doing chemical application. And one of the reasons that this came up was because the DNR is not going to allow chemical or mechanical harvesting. Is shown, as we've learned more through the years, mechanical harvesting has been shown to actually sometimes spread invasive species. Each little cut of a plant can sometimes spread into a new plant, and so you're not being able to control the spread of the invasives. It's also very non-selective, so you could be harvesting curly-leaf pondweed, which is an invasive, right next to the natives and decimating the entire plant population, which has a negative impact on your fisheries. And so that's what we've seen in Sauk Lake, and we can't attribute one to the other specifically, but inferences can be made. And so that's another reason why we've decided to give up the mechanical harvester. Not sure if that addresses all of the questions.
Anybody have any other questions?
One of the things, and I don't know, maybe it was in there and I missed it, but if the city decided to go ahead with the agreement and we do a plan and we bring it to the watershed and you guys hand over the money saying, yeah, everything's fine, is the watershed going to hit us with administration fees for looking over the project and handing out checks?
No, the watershed will actually continue to be the fiscal agent. And so anytime that you have an expense, or the Lake Association has an expense that's related to the project as outlined here, they would actually turn in kind of a reimbursement, basically, and the watershed would pay that with our accounting system. To there. So it wouldn't be any fiscal turnover of any money. It's basically waiting to use that money that's currently there until it's depleted.
What would be the administrative function then of the city, if any?
According to the agreement, I think the only, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vicki, the only administrative burden would be to go over that work plan on an annual basis with the Lake Association. Yep, that's it.
Okay, another question. If the city opts out and the Lake Association takes over, now does the money, and the Lake Association develops the agreement, the money that the city contributed, what happens to that? Is that just going to stay in and the city's out, or is it going to get our share coming back to us?
Nope, it just stays there. Okay. So the pool of funds just remains.
So it'd be like a donation to the...
Well, it's already there. It's not technically a donation. I liken it to the fact that the city is like every other landowner on this assessment. We can't give an individual landowner their money back because they want it. That's not the way that the statute reads to do this. And so the city is no different than any other landowner that's contributed to these funds at one time. And so yes, that pool of funds is built from those assessments, and the city was one of those landowners on that assessment. So it either all gets turned back or none of it gets turned back. That's how it works.
So whatever percentage based on your formula that needs to be paid back, we would just be one participant of those funds reimbursed if that was how this was chosen to move forward.
Yeah, I believe when it was first initiated, the city was a lump assessment just to the city, and the city could decide how they wanted to break that assessment up after that. And that's how we've done it with most of our projects where the city's involved. We give you the assessment and you can break it up among your parcels or residents however you choose.
Right.
Okay.
I'm a little confused here. You seem to say that money's not coming back, and yet your legal description says that if this project closes out, the money goes back to the property owners again.
If the board was to decide to close the project, the money would all go back to the landowners. Yes, that's what would happen. But
okay, so if the project closes, the money will return to the city and the property owners.
Yeah, if they were to close the project, but we can't decide to just return the city's portion of the funds or just return the landowner's portion of the funds.
You can't decide to only return part of it.
Yeah.
Well, I gather that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that would be, the project would have to close, not just because the city backs out entirely, the project would have to close.
Yeah, our watershed district board would have to make the
Yeah.
determination that they want to close out the project and deplete the funds.
Bob, did you have some comments you wanted to make? In regards to- Go ahead.
If you're through with what you want to tell.
You can join her at the podium. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor and member of the council, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you about this. And I can assure you that our board is very anxious to work with you people and get this lake weed harvest project going the way you people would like it to go. I'm a member of the board, but of course, as you well know, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I do know that that's their feelings. I was here at the time that this project was petitioned. It was petitioned, I believe, in '91. We hired a custom cutter to cut in '90. And then I believe it was the Sauk Center City that petitioned us to do the weed harvest. And we operate under, well, let me say this, the Sauk River Watershed District is a local unit of state government, and our parent really is the Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources. When we are petitioned with a project to do, the law provides that we appoint 3 disinterested people to be viewers, to go out and look at the locality that's going to be affected by, and decide what the damages and the benefits will be. In the first 2 or 3 projects that we did, the state allows the watershed district to use their own managers as those 3 people. And we did that. I happened to be the one that the managers chose to be a viewer for this project. But after doing this 2 or 3 times, we began to realize that it really wasn't fair to the public for the board itself to do this, because we become the judge and the jury both. The board is not apt to turn down a project that 3 of their members chose. So after that, we have always hired commercial, well, I should say certified public viewers, and it has worked very well. One of the things the reasons why we did what we did to begin with was cost. We wanted to keep it down as low as we could. And our board at that time was getting paid $10 an hour. A certified viewer charges $100 an hour, and now I think it's up to $150. And we were doing it for 10. So we thought it would be a bargain. But as I say, we realized it really wasn't fair to the public to be, both the judge and the jury. And how we did this on this weed harvest project, we used the figure that the custom cutter had charged the year before and kind of divided it out in the area that we did, so that we had an estimate of what a commercial harvester would charge. We used that as one of our figures. And then, of course, we used an estimate of what an engineer decided would be the cost of the equipment, and that, was the damages. And so we apportioned out the payment that people would have to pay as benefits. And we, on the lakeshore away from the city, we apportioned it in 2 rates. The front footage, the people that owed that paid more than the people across the road that were what we call second tier. And what we did with the city, we assessed the city for the campground and the park as though it was unimproved frontier. And came up with a city figure then of benefits, and that's what we charged the city. Then all of the rest of the city, if they were within the city limits and a front foot, we charge them, of course, the same as outside of the city. But if anything that didn't have front footage, we charge them the same as second tier outside. And the law provides then that you have an informational hearing first, and you present all of the figures, and then the boards decide, is it worth doing? And if the board decides that, then you have a permanent hearing. And then you try to get those figures as close as you think is fair. And so that's what we did. And I was administrator for 9.5 years, and the original plan stayed the same in those 9.5 years. But shortly after that, it was revised, and so Tara here has more information on that revised plan than I can tell you. But I do know this, I know you were concerned about, what are we going to do with the money if this is just abandoned? And this could well happen. But let me tell you this, that in my guess, and of course it's merely a guesstimate, but I would say that the average city owner here would probably get somewhere between $4 and $6 back. But there's a catch to that. It's going to be a tremendous amount of book work and legal work to get this accomplished. And that has to come out of that fund. And then the county charges so much a parcel for everything you do with that parcel. So, figure that in your head and add it up. And I think the public here and you people would get more benefit out of that money that lays there if you could use it in a revised plan that you and the Lake Association can agree with. And of course, you have to realize that we have to abide by the law, which spells out in 103D, what we have to do. We can't do something the law won't allow us to do. But basically, what you're asking to do, we think that can be done. And we just want you to be a part of it, and we hope that everybody gets the dues that they have a right to have, and it keeps this lake a beautiful lake. I want to say one thing, and I've told you that, I can't speak for the board, but my idea is what I have just told you. I believe in it. With one reservation, I've been a farmer. At my peak, I farmed 1,400 acres. I have used tons of herbicide and pesticides, and tried to use them responsibly. They always told us that they were harmless. I've been married for 64 years to a wonderful wife, and she's given us 7 children. Even in our retirement years, for 10 years, she was head cook just like Grandma's in Osakis. But about 15 years ago, she developed Parkinson's. And it's a terrible disease, I can tell you, firsthand. One of the things that we did was went to Rochester to see what could be done to save her. They told us in Rochester that the incidence of Parkinson's in the upper Midwest is 300 times greater than any other place in the world. And they are suspicious that agricultural chemicals have something to do with it. My wife did almost everything on the farm, but one thing she never did was spraying. However, I used paraquat once as a desiccant on sunflowers, and it's still used today to desiccant on potato vines. But I hired it custom sprayed with an airplane. I combined it, and my wife hauled the sunflowers home and dried them in the dryer, and they were extremely dusty. They know now with experiments that if they expose animals to Parkinson's, almost immediately they get the symptoms of human beings with Parkinson's. Keep in mind that Sauk River comes out of Sauk Lake, and it goes to the city of St. Cloud, and shortly after it comes out, the city pulls in their drinking water. I have a real fear of chemicals. They tell you that they're harmless, but I've told you what happened to our family. I have a fear of it, but I just want that for your information. But again, I will support what our board wants to do. I'll support what you want to do. And maybe if it comes to a vote that this is going to be chemicals and 8 of the board votes to use it, I might vote not to, just so that it goes on record, so that 30 years from now, if they find out that chemical causes something bad, my name will be clear. But anyway, thank you much. And Tara, I think, can answer any other questions. And if you have questions of me, fire them.
Any questions for Bob? Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions specific to Tara as it was outlined in your packet?
Well, I have a couple questions. One general kind of question here. We met, and you've got a number of questions and things that were brought up. Are you asking us to approve this agreement? Because we asked questions, and there are supposed to be changes, and this is the same agreement that was here months ago.
Yeah, so this is basically a question and answers session. I'm hoping that we can incorporate the answers that we were provided by our attorney into this agreement. If you'll notice, some of the specific questions that you asked in regards to this agreement was the sunset clause, which we're more than willing to put that in there, just for other council members' information. The sunset clause would allow you to say, okay, we only want this agreement to run for 10 years or 20 years or whatever you want it to be, and then at that time we would look at what the status of the project is. Say you depleted the funds by $100,000. Doesn't look like it's coming back, doesn't look like it's a problem as far as aquatic plant management. We're not using the funds, whatever. After that 10 years, we can then go through and abandon the project, and at that time you could return the funds. So it's basically a sunset clause, just lets you have that option of saying this isn't in perpetuity, which it kind of sounds like it is now. So we can definitely add the sunset clause in there. The other specific question I think that you had on here was turning the money back.
Well, I specifically asked about the assessment. The way it's worded, it says you're going to assess for the project costs and sufficient to maintain a 50% contingency.
Yes.
Which means which says that you're going to assess every year. If you're doing $20,000 worth of project, you're going to assess $20,000 plus 10 more if you don't have that fund on hand. The way it's written, you're never going to really use the funds that are on hand unless you go over budget.
That's correct. So that's
so that needs to be resaid.
Yeah, that's in question 12.
I think if I can add to Dave's, the answers to the questions and the legal explanation has not been incorporated in the agreement as it's laid into this draft to us.
Yes. I think what we're trying to do here is answer these questions that you had. If these questions are satisfactorily answered, as provided by our attorney, then we'll incorporate those, and then we can enter into the agreement or decide what the board wants to do. We didn't want to spend more legal fees to do another draft document if the council decides not to be a part of the agreement.
So you need to revise the agreement.
So a revised agreement would come if we were to move this forward and be part of it.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, so the assessments will continue. basically.
The provision, if you look on question 12,
Yeah.
SRWD answer 12, this is a clause that I don't think our attorney wants to take out in case the project would come to a point where you would want to, like say you have a unexplainable outbreak of curly leaf pondweed again, and it appears to be a huge issue. And at that time, you could then reevaluate this project, and then if it was deemed at that time that you wanted to assess, you still have that ability to keep the project open. If we didn't have that clause in there, it would inhibit us from actually keeping the project open at that time where it would actually be a useful project. And it doesn't really matter, because if it wasn't, if you depleted the funds all the way down to zero, you would abandon the project anyway. It's just it's a clause that's in there, and I understand that you're not comfortable with that clause. And I think that's something that we can still change. Yeah, I think the explanation here is basically why that clause is in there instead of what can be done about it.
Yeah, well, I don't have a problem with the fact that you have a funding source. I get that part. What I don't like is the fact that it says you're going to assess for the costs, not spend, your intention is not to take your first dollar out of the reserve account, which is how it should be.
Yeah. I think that we can, if the council would like to enter into this agreement, I can certainly have that redrafted to maybe state that we're going to use reserves first, or to a certain amount of the reserves.
I don't think it's that hard to say that you're going to, you're only going to assess if the reserves are not sufficient to cover 1.5 times project costs.
Yeah, we can change that.
One of the other things that I noticed was the district basically bowed out of the weed management program now, basically because they don't feel it's significant enough to be a part of. If all of a sudden in 10 years and it changes again, is the watershed district going to jump back in and take over the controls on this?
Well, that's one of the management scenarios that we go through every 10 years. Every 10 years we do an overall plan update. That's by statute. So every 10 years we reevaluate our priorities. In this 10-year cycle that we're just going into right now, where our plan is still in draft form, we've identified as AIS as not being a concern of ours. In 10 years, will it be? I don't think so, because the state has already taken a huge leap in their AIS management as far as the Department of Natural Resources is concerned. So I can't speak for what's going to happen in the next 10 years, but I am going on the path that the watershed district is not going to be involved in AIS. As I stated before, this is the only AIS project we're involved with in the entire district, and the only one we ever have been involved in. So it's not a priority for us.
Okay. Any other questions?
As far as just personal comment, if the city decided not to be part of this, what I'm thinking is, really, as far as a governmental agency, we'd be out of this. But I think there's a lot of members around the lake, of the Lake Association, so it'd be really hard for them, This end of the lake is still going to be represented as far as if the city bows out and lets the Lake Association do the agreement. That's just a personal feeling. And in fact, they might even gain more members if there's interest on that deal.
Get it.
I guess, that would be one of my concerns would be is I haven't really heard from the Lake Association, from their perspective about how they feel this going forward with or without the city. Maybe they would rather do it without the city. I don't know, maybe having more government involvement is more problemsome in this particular project. We have some people here. I don't know if you have any thoughts or comments about that, but have you had any feedback in regards to?
Yes, we have talked with the Lake Association about this project, and I think they're on board either way. They're committed to this project with or without the city. Allowing the funds to stay in that pool of funds that are there currently allows them the ability to manage the lake for the current problems that are there and maybe future problems. We know that we have curly leaf pondweed in the lake. It is a river system, so obviously things can keep on coming down. We're going to see a problem maybe in the future with some other invasive coming in that we've spotted in the lake. And so those are all things that can be controlled under this agreement. If the board would take the position of wanting to abandon the project and give back all the funds, the Lake Association would now have to come up with a new way of raising funds. And it's going statewide that the easiest way to do that is to form a LID, which is a lake improvement district, which is essentially the same process that we just went through to do these funds here. So more than likely they would do the exact same thing to manage the ponds or to manage the weeds.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I just had one. It's more of a comment than a question. It refers to that question 10. Does the city have to be involved in this agreement at all? And the answer was no, but if the city chooses not to participate, it will have no say in the development of a work plan and budget. Will that affect us adversely? And that's probably more of a question for the city people. And have we ever had much input on a work plan for this lake?
No.
As far as like the work plan, that goes with every year the watershed district applies for the permit that goes with the weed harvester, and that permit is from the DNR. So I don't believe that the city's had any involvement with the permit process for that. So besides for the 2 times of the entirety of this project where we've modified the original petition, the first being the establishment and the second being the modification of the original petition, those are the only times that anything has been decided regarding this project.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I've got an opinion to that effect, because I think the same reason that the city got involved 20-some years ago, city tax money is going to that project. It seems like we should maintain some visibility and control. I'm happier seeing this go to an outside supplier, vendor, whatever you want to call it, to spray, rather than having our own people do it. You know, past performance says that if we were doing it, if we had our own people, we could all look forward to having this abused like the weed cutter was, where private property would be getting sprayed.
David, I think I can have an answer for you in regards to the money that's current. I can safely say that it's the board's wish that we spend those current funds down considerably before we levy any more. We want to know what's working. I can't see that our board is going to want to levy new money when we've got money laying there. As far as you, Warren, in your question about, supposing 5 years, 10 years from now, all of a sudden another weed comes in and gives you a real problem. That's why our board would like to not see you disband this completely, because it's a terrible, costly procedure to start all over again and do what we've already got in place. I think it's our wish that you could come up with an agreement that we could leave what we have in place, but you work with the people and get a draft agreement and work with us, and I think that things will come out real good.
Very good, thank you. I think we've definitely spent a great amount of time on this, and it's very important, I think, too. I mean, the city certainly, again, has a huge interest in the health of the lake, no question about it. It's a huge asset to the community. It's a huge asset to the homeowners all around the lake, not just in the city limits. So, and I think, from Dave and some other council members' perspective is, we do pay a great share of that. We petitioned for significant funds from the city to assist with that project. Those dollars are still there, so I think we should have some part into how it gets spent, even if it's once a year or twice a year. I prefer not that the city have additional costs taken for administering and paying the bills and doing all of the stuff that we haven't had to do. I'd prefer to see it in that similar fashion, but only us have input in the planning. So with that, I guess I'll ask for the council if they have any more questions. Otherwise, Terry, you have any additional last comments?
I don't have any more comments other than what's already in there.
All right, thank you. With that, I'll ask for the council to have a action for the staff so we know what to do moving this forward. We do know that the agreement that we have in here right now does not incorporate the questions and the answers that we had asked. So if we were to move forward with an agreement, it would be a revised agreement with incorporating what we have asked and what our discussions were tonight. You'd bring that back to the council for approval at a later meeting. I don't know the timeline. Do you think, Tara, that would take to get that revised and back to us?
It's a simple change of a few sentences within the paragraph, so I could have it done by next council meeting.
Okay. Staff, Vicki, do you have any additional questions, comments, concerns? You've been pretty quiet through this process.
If you take action to have her go forward, you should just list the things so that you want to have included in there, just so that we don't miss something. I mean, we were taking notes, but we just want to make sure that the things, if you wanted to incorporate the sunset clause or that type of thing, what are those items? And you had the issue about spending down the reserve before you assess new money. You know, if there's any more points that you want to make sure were included, we'll just list them now. So when we come back with a final, we're actually final.
Okay.
One other thing that I want to add to that, you have a clause in that agreement. I know it's early in the agreement. I don't recall what it is right off, but it says that, and regarding the plan, if the city and the Lake Association can't reach an agreement, you assume that last year's plan will be used. I think that if we can't reach an agreement, you assume that there will be no plan for the year. I mean, using last year's plan, that doesn't make any sense. And if we can't come to some sort of an agreement, then we deserve to get nothing done. Not last year's project over again.
That's a fresh look on it.
What was that?
That's a fresh look.
I mean, you know, if you can't work it out, then nothing happens, not the wrong thing.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you would just assume that no money would be spent for that year.
Yeah, we're just not spending money this year.
Yep.
That's a very good point. Vicki, do you have outlined our concerns and things that we would like to see added in a revised agreement based on our discussion, or do we need to go through and give you more detail?
Okay, then we have the one that you just talked about. If there's no plan, then we're not going to spend any money. We have that we would spend down the reserves before we trigger the assessment, and that the question if you wanted to sunset it after 10 years or if that's even an issue anymore. You had some pretty big conversation about that before, or do we just...
I think that, to me, that still makes sense. This should not just go on forever and nobody can get out of it. You have to have an option to stop. You know, and it can be renewed, but it should have an end point.
10 year.
So that's a change to item B, which would be the plan. We don't do the work if we don't. And a change to F is that we'd spend the reserve first, and then we would have to add a sunset part to this. And then was there a question that you had earlier about the insurance, the liability insurance under item J? I know one of you had a question about that last time that we talked about this.
I think that only matters if we're buying equipment and hiring people, and we're not doing that, so.
Okay.
Right.
I think the only question we had is why even bother to have it in there, because nobody's going to be buying that equipment. Nobody on the Lake Association, nobody on the city is going to learn how to spread pesticide or herbicides on the lake, so it's just not going to happen.
Well, even the use of the harvester isn't going to happen.
And the harvester is not going to happen. It's going to be made illegal anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I think there was clarification on that too, that could be taken out of the agreement.
I mean, it's just an irrelevant clause because nobody's going to have that equipment anyway.
Okay. Any other changes? Hearing none, rather than taking action to approve it, I would just like to have a motion to table any action in regards to the agreement as outlined until we have a new agreement.
I will make a motion to table this until we have an updated agreement.
Second.
A motion by Dave and seconded by Mike. Any further discussion? I'll call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. We appreciate your time and Bob, as you as well for coming in and helping us with some of the history.
With Lake Association, I'd just like to thank and express our thank you for working with us on this thing. I think it's very important to keep this going. We can work together.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
When we talked about membership, the city is actually a member of the Lake Association. Thought you might want to know that.
All right, moving on to unfinished business B, insurance agent of record.
But if you recall, we had the interviews of the insurance agents, and we really didn't take action because of the timing of the insurance renewal, et cetera. But I just want to get back to the agents to let them know what our plan is as we move forward, and just coming back to the city council just to make sure I have some concurrence on that. Is this something that you want to say we're going to make a change now and implement at a later date, or are we just going to let them know that we're just going to lay it on the table for now until we get later in the year, or if we're just going to leave things go status quo? I just need to get back to them so they're not left hanging out there.
Well, I believe in the approval of the expenses this evening. We have our insurance premiums. So for 2014, our premiums have been paid, so meaning our agent of record is being compensated for his work. My thought is we did go through the process. We have 3 viable candidates, but 2014's covered. I would recommend to the council that we would re-look at this in August when we start our planning, so we give them enough time and look at it and make a decision at that time if we want to change our agent of record for 2015.
Yep.
Based on the timing.
And I'll make a motion to that effect.
Okay, I have a motion by Warren. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Warren and seconded by Dave. Did you get the motion? All right, thank you. With that, is there any discussion? Call the motion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. Thank you. We have no new business. We do have our consent agenda that has 3 items on it this evening. Our schedule of claims for a total of unpaid claims of $240,264.36. Paid claims of $2,668.21 for a total of $242,932.57. We also had January checks. Check numbers is outlined below, plus some payroll of $1,830,127.66. Also, we have a gambling application for exempt permit for Holy Family School for a raffle on March 30th, 2014. Is there any questions in regards to the consent agenda as presented? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Dave. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Keith. Call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. The last thing on our agenda this evening is a few informational items. I'll just quickly go through them. The Board of Review and Equalization meeting is May 5th, 2014, right here at the council chambers at 1 p.m. Please check your calendars for that. We also have the hazardous waste collection, June 14th from 9 to 1 p.m., Becker City Sanitation. And we have a notice of a public hearing for the Sauk River Watershed District's revised management plan, which is February 20th, 5:30 to 7 p.m., which is the Melrose City Center, and you can see in your packet that that includes a number of areas that this includes, including the city of Sauk and many other cities in the counties, surrounding counties. We also have a loss control workshop, various dates and locations, so if it's something somebody's interested in attending, visit with Vicki and please schedule that with the League of Minnesota Cities. Hearing that, does anybody have any comments?
Just one question. The Board of Appeal and Equalization meeting, who's certified again? And
You and Warren are the 2 that are certified, so I need to absolutely have at least one of you at that meeting.
Okay.
Now, they are having some classes that they'll be,
well, we don't have to.
you don't have to go there, but I mean, they'll be adding more classes to try to get some more people certified.
Could you send us out an agenda, Vicki, of those classes? And
I will do that.
Where they're at, please.
And then on that hazardous waste collection, that's the one where we need some volunteers, so we make sure to retain that in town. And then that public hearing for the watershed, that is actually the revised 10-year management plan that she actually referred to, is that this is their new plan for the next 10 years, and it lays out what they're going to do, so. I'll be going to that meeting to see what its effect would be on the city and if there's any input we can give.
Thank you, Vicki.
I also noticed on this cleanup, it doesn't say anything about RV refrigerators on there. Are they taken now?
No, that's for Sarah's
that's the
cleanup.
matter-
That's
the
not
matter.
for this one.
That's the other one.
All right, hearing that, I appreciate everybody's comments and participation this evening. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion by Warren, do I have a second? Seconded by Mike. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.